Welcome everybody to our third webinar. It's great to see so many people on the call. For any of you that are newcomers to our webinar series, I'm Jerry Friedman, grandma, mom, and co-chair of ECA, and that is in order of importance, I think. So now we'll move on to the second part of our webinar, and you're going to hear from ECA leaders who are going to give you all of the information that you need to participate in the Candidates Pledge Climate Action Project, which is another avenue where we hope to impact the upcoming election and impact the candidates in what their positions are, and get climate on the table and as part of the discussion moving forward into this election. This midterm election is, as Nathaniel said, is incredibly important. It is the most important one we've had for quite some time. So I'm going to introduce to you two people, Margot Frank, who is co-chair of ECA's Communications Committee and is a member of our Coordinating Council. She loves being a grandmother, but worries about the world her grandkids will inherit. In addition to her work at ECA, she's a part-time clinical social worker, creating resiliency in her rural Northern California community where wildfires are an ongoing threat. And Margot is here with us tonight and is sitting in her home between two fires, the two major fires in California. So thank you, Margot, for doing this. And then the second part of this will be Jen Chandler, who is the Director of Operations at ECA. And for the past 3 years, Jen has been working to help us build a movement of elders committed to climate action. She's got a background in nonprofit management, visual arts, and education. And without her, we wouldn't be anywhere near where we are today. So moving on, I'd like to introduce Margot to you, and she's going to talk about our Candidates Pledge Climate Action Project. Margot, it's yours.
Thank you, Jerry. Jen, if you can bring up the slide with our goals on it. I want to talk a little bit about why we're doing this Candidates Pledge Climate Action Project. As Nathaniel mentioned, you know, candidates and elected officials are not going to talk about climate change if they don't think that it matters to people who are likely to vote. So every time we speak up, and when we speak up and we ask them for their commitment, we're letting them know that we care and that we care as elders. And I think we discovered when we visited candidate or congressional offices in DC last year that it's unusual for people in DC to be approached and asked for something that's not of benefit to the person who's asking. And that we stand out when we speak up because we are speaking up for our grandchildren, for future generations, not about ourselves. Also, elders are more likely to vote than other demographic groups. And so our voice carries some weight with people running for office. Our first goal, of course, is that we want to get a commitment from all candidates running for office that they will take action on climate change if they are elected. This means that we're going to ask all the candidates for any particular office. I'm going to talk a little more about our nonpartisan approach, but similar to what Nathaniel said, their organization's approaches, we do not endorse candidates, but we want to make sure that we put the same effort into getting a pledge from every candidate running for any particular office. Our second goal is to really make sure that climate change becomes part of the conversation this election year. As Nathaniel mentioned, unless candidates hear that it matters to people who are going to vote for them, they're not going to address it. And our pledge is unique, you'll see when I go over that in a couple of minutes, in that it's different than other pledges that oftentimes candidates and elected officials are asked to sign that are usually specific to a particular piece of legislation or action. Ours is much broader, and really we are asking them to take a stand, as it says in our third goal here, to take a stand on climate change. Do they believe that climate change is real? Are they willing to say that they understand the impacts of it and that they want to take action on it? And of course, doing this action of engaging them in signing the pledge is just the beginning of building a relationship with them so that once they are elected, we can be monitoring whether they're holding to their pledge. As Nathaniel pointed out, when somebody pledges something, then you can hold their feet to the fire over that. And then our fourth goal is to make sure that they understand that the will and power of elders to take a stand on climate action is that we are speaking up, and that their stand on climate action will determine how we vote and where we donate money for election campaigns. I think we're ready for the next slide, Jen. Elders Climate Action is a project of the Conscious Elders Network, which is a nonprofit organization, is designated by the IRS. And this means that we must be nonpartisan. We are dedicated to providing information and opportunities for our members to get engaged and take action on climate change, but we do not endorse any candidates for office. And as you engage in this project, we want to make sure that you will not speak up and say, oh, Elders Climate Action is endorsing this candidate because he signed the pledge. We cannot do that. But we can let people know that that candidate signed the pledge. And I'll show you how we're going to do that. So basically, we just give them the opportunity to share their commitment to active climate change legislation by signing the pledge. And as I mentioned, we're going to ask candidates from all parties to sign this pledge. And while we specifically are targeting people running for Congress and the Senate on the national level, we can also use it to approach people running on the state level or on the local level. So let's look at the pledge, Jen, and I'm going to read over it. I want you to notice as I read it that we talk about the economic impact, our role as a world leader, and national security. We focus it on things, on issues that matter to all of these elected officials. So it says, I recognize that climate change poses a threat to the health of our citizens, our economic growth, our reputation as a world leader, and our national security. I will engage with my fellow elected officials at local, state, and federal level to support climate legislation and regulatory policies to avoid the potentially devastating social, economic, and national security impact of climate change. I recognize that such legislation can support economic growth by stimulating technological innovation, development of a more resilient infrastructure, and increasing domestic employment. For those of you who were on the last webinar and heard Bob Inglis from Republic EN talk about important ways of communicating with conservative candidates about climate change, I want to encourage you to, if you already were part of that webinar or not, to go back to our website and listen to it again and take some notes, because it will help you in being able to talk about this issue with candidates who may be coming from a more conservative viewpoint. And I just want to say that, as Jerry mentioned, I'm living within 10 miles of the two fires that started the Mendocino Complex fire in Northern California, the biggest fire in history in the state of California. And there are climate disasters and devastation happening all over the planet this summer. So it is much more on people's minds, and I think it's a launching point for all of us in bringing this up with candidates. So let's look at how do you find the candidates pledge on our website. Well, we made it easy for you. There's a couple of different ways you can do it. So when you go to eldersclimateaction.org, at the top of the page, you see the Get Inspired, Get Informed, Get Engaged tags. And if you put your cursor over the Get Engaged one, you get a drop-down menu. And then in the Take Action with ECA section, on the side of that, then you can bring up Candidates Pledge Climate Action 2018. So that's one way to find us. The other way is to just scroll down the homepage until you come to the section that says Take Action with ECA. The first action shown on the left of that box is the Elders Vote for the Climate, our collaboration with the Environmental Voter Project. And the middle one is the Candidates Pledge Climate Action section. And so you can click there, and that will also take you to the pledge project and information on that. Now, let's look at the next slide, Jen. Many of you, like me, maybe have never approached a candidate about anything, may never have spoken up at a town hall meeting. Some of you probably are old hands at this, but up until a couple of years ago, I had never done that, and I was pretty nervous about it. We want to give you support and guidance and help you to feel as confident as possible. You do not have to be a climate scientist or a policy wonk to be able to do this project. All you have to be is a concerned voter. So, you know, this may be something new for you. Certainly as we get older, as we are elders now, we know that the more that you do something that's unfamiliar, the easier it gets. So you might think of doing this project just as a way to practice getting more engaged with elected officials. When you're on the Candidates Pledge Climate Action page, under the, and you scroll down to the Need Help section, you will see 3 boxes there. Now on our website, there won't be that big green arrow that says Need Help, but you'll see it very clearly when you get to that section. And the first section on the left is our Getting Started guide. And in there are just some simple tips to help you get started. One of the most important things that we can do this, to engage in this project, is not to try to do it all alone. If, like me, you live in a large district or you live in a more rural area, it's really helpful to have other people to partner with you. But wherever you are, even if you don't know other members of ECA, you can ask neighbors, friends, people at your faith community, other groups you belong to, your book club, whatever. Ask other people if they would like to help you do this so that you're not having to undertake it all on your own, and you can support one another. And it's actually doing that is a great way to get a local Elders Climate Action group started. So it may be that you, by reaching out and pulling some people in to help you on this project, you're able to build a chapter where you live. That's really how the Northern California chapter got started after the 2016 election, when we undertook a pledge campaign at that time also. Also, if you have moved and you used to live in a different district or state, we encourage you to reach out to the candidates in that area, or to ask people that you know in that area to join our campaign also. We really want to try to get as many candidates as possible talking about climate change, thinking about climate change, and pledging action on climate change. Now you might be thinking, I don't even know who's running for office in my district. I missed the results of the primary. I can't remember, too many things to keep track of. Well, on that Getting Started guide section, we have a link to Ballotpedia. And if you want to bring up the next slide, thanks, Jen. Ballotpedia.org is an amazing organization. You go to their website and you just put in, I think it's all you put in is your zip code, and it will tell you who is running for office in your district and your state. And it will give you links to their campaign websites. One thing that's really important to remember is that federal law prohibits any elected official from using their congressional office and staff on their campaign. That means that if you contact their office in Washington and ask them to sign the pledge that way because they're running up for office again, they will not be able to respond to you. So by going to Ballotpedia, you can find out how to contact their campaign office, where it's located, their email address, their phone number, and you can begin to build a relationship with some staff people there. So I really want to encourage you to use that as a resource. Also, we have, next to the Getting Started guide, there is the Talking Points for Climate Pledge Meetings section. And in here, we have some data about health and economic impacts of climate change, information about our role as a world leader in national security and the impact of climate change in those areas, how addressing climate change can lead to innovation and a more resilient nation. And there's even some quotes that you might draw on from members of the bipartisan Congressional Climate Solutions Caucus, which is a growing group in Washington that is part of the Congress there. And then the final section in the Need Help section is our Talking Climate with Others section. So if you're going, there's some tips in there for how to have bring up climate change in an individual meeting with a candidate or at a public event like a candidates forum or a town hall meeting. We want to remind you that candidates are just people like you and me. Many of them are parents and grandparents. They clearly care about the future and what's happening for future generations. Now, the way they want to address that may be different than your way of thinking, but they do care. And if you can connect with their caring, we've got a better chance of developing a dialogue and a possibility of getting them to address climate change. So the first step is always, of course, to build a relationship. Speaking from your heart is the most powerful way. When you speak about why you're doing this, why you care, it really carries a powerful message. And as I mentioned earlier, we really experienced that when we were in Washington visiting every congressional and Senate office last year. In this section, you'll also find a sample script for meeting with them, some tips for writing letters to your representatives, some links to information about the impact of climate change where you live. This is incredibly valuable information in being able to talk about it on a local and state level with candidates and asking them how are they going to address this when it's impacting so many people in their district. There also are some responses developed by our friends at Citizens Climate Lobby to talk about concerns they may have about carbon fee and dividend. And if you don't know much about carbon fee and dividend, go to the Citizens Climate Lobby website. There's a wealth of information about it there. In our next webinar, we'll also be going over all the resources that are on our website. We have suggestions for books and videos and films. We've got videos that we've created. We've got links to other websites, all kinds of information. Now I'm going to turn it over to Jen, who's going to explain to you how to get that signed pledge and to get that information to us.
Yes, thank you, Margot. And I'm really excited to be here. And I just want to remind people that you can submit any questions you might have in the question and answer section on this Zoom call. So if there's any questions that come up about using the pledge as we go through these slides, feel free to submit a question and I will try to answer it later. We've tried to make it as easy as possible for you to be able to go and solicit the signatures on the pledge from your candidates. And so there's two different ways that you can get this pledge in the hands of the candidates in your area. The first way is going to be for them to directly sign the pledge from the ECA website. So here on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see this is a screenshot of the Climate Pledge the Candidates Pledge Climate Action Project page. And you'll see if you scroll down that page just a little bit, that down here, the first sort of big green text, you can see my green arrow pointing there, is where the candidate can go to sign the pledge themselves. So one option is, you're in a candidate meeting, you can invite the candidate to bring up the website. You could send them the link after the website. And we've also created an email template that I'll be showing you in just a moment to send out to those candidates. That would be asking them to sign the pledge. I know in Arizona that the pilot project happening in Arizona, that they have utilized this method and have sent out some sort of bulk emails to the candidates in Arizona and asking them to sign the pledge. And there's been a number of people that have come to our website and signed the pledge themselves. And that's what we want to see. We want to see lots of candidates taking action on climate change and stepping up to the plate to sign this pledge. So when they go to that particular link, if they were to click on that link, this is what they would see. They would see the pledge in the top. They would have a place for their name, their district, if it's applicable, state, the office that they're running for, their party affiliation, and then contact information for their campaign. We also ask if we have permission to use a headshot of them or to acknowledge them on social media. And then we ask them to verify their pledge. So we want them to check the box that they say yes and submit this pledge. That way we know that the candidate themselves completed this pledge by checking that box and submitting it. Another, oh, and let me tell you this too. If you're looking to figure out how to send just a link directly to the pledge, you can always select the URL at the top of the page and cut and paste this URL directly into an email. So this URL would give them a direct link right into the candidate pledge form. It would bypass the ECA website. We've also created an email template. So just below where we were before, signing the candidate's pledge, the next green text below that, where my green arrow is pointing right now, says send an email to a candidate in your area. It's the candidate email template. And I have produced a short 2-minute video just to show you how to drop the information from this document into your email. So I'm going to show you that and talk you through that process in case cutting and pasting into an email is new for you. So here's what you would see when you click that link, when you click that purple button on that last page. You would come to something that looks like this, and there's directions at the top there. And again, a reminder that you can get your candidate email addresses on Ballotpedia. But essentially what you're going to do is you are going to you're going to select the text, and then you're going to use copy, which is Command-C or Control-C if you're on a PC. And you will copy that text, and then you'll go into your email and compose an email, and you're going to drop that text right into the email by hitting Control-P or Command-P, which is paste. Once you've pasted into the document, you will want to go ahead and change your contact information. So here you can see I'm adding my name, my address, and I will add my email. We encourage you to use your address. If you don't want to include your address, then put your city and state. This way they know that you're a constituent. An address often will, they will contact you back if you provide an address. So if you send a letter to most candidates or most elected officials, it's likely you'll get a address back or a letter back if you include your address. You can also see that you can change the text, so you can write dear whoever. You can also include your own personal text in the body of the email if you want to write something specific to your state. Make sure you include a subject line that captures the attention of your candidate, and then insert their email address at the top. Now, if you wanted to do a blind carbon copy is a way that you can send multiple emails, the same email to multiple email addresses. So by blind carbon copying them, they won't see who you've sent the email to other than themselves, and they won't see the email addresses. So if you're going to email out to a large group of candidates, say you want to email all of the people running for state senate, all parties, you would use a blind carbon copy, and then down in the greeting line, you would change that to "Dear candidate for state senate," or something that's a little bit more general and broad. So you can really personalize these emails, or you could send something that is a blind carbon copy out to all of the candidates if you wanted to try to just tackle this project all in one big email. Whatever works best for you, we're just trying to make it as user-friendly and as simple of a process as possible. The other way that you can access the pledge is by printing it out, by downloading and printing. So here you can see that there's two separate pledges. One, Candidates Pledge Climate Action 2018, is for federal. So that would be House and Senate federal offices. And then we have state and local. And state and local could be, it could be county commissioner, it could be state's attorney, it could be whatever, any elected position that you have in your state. You can send this pledge to those individuals. And just below the image of the pledge, you will see a purple text, and that purple text is the download link. So if you click here, you're going to get to a file that you're going to be able to download, and then you can print that out on your home printer. It has room on the form to put your name and your email address, and that way they know what constituent has contacted them. And you can take that directly to a meeting with a representative, or you could take that to a town hall meeting or a community forum or something of the like, and ask the candidate in person. In Arizona, I know that the Arizona chapter has attended a number of these types of meetings, and what they tend to do is they pose a question to the candidate, and so that there's already a little bit of a relationship formed with the candidate, and when the forum is over or the community event is over, they'll go up and ask that candidate to sign our pledge. And it has been very successful in Arizona, which tends to be a very conservative community. Once you've received that signed pledge, you could upload it here on our website, or the candidate themselves could come here and upload that signed pledge. Again, two different buttons based on if it's a federal pledge or a state and local pledge. But if you click the purple button down here on the bottom, you will get to a form that looks like this. On the right, you see your name and email. That is whoever is submitting the form would fill that in. They would fill in the candidate name, running for the office of, state and congressional district if applicable, and then upload a copy or a scanned version or a photograph of that signed pledge. The upload process is very easy, even if you're not very computer savvy, but you do need to either to take a photograph on your cell phone or scan that document into your computer. If you don't have the ability to do that, just contact me at info@eldersclimateaction.org, and I'd be more than happy to work with you to figure out the best way that we can get your signed pledges uploaded to our website. And here in the center, you can see when you click add file, you're going to see a window that looks like this, and you're just going to click that select files from your computer box, and then you'll be able to go in and retrieve the file from your computer and upload it. It's a very easy process, but I know some of us get a little confused and aren't very computer savvy. So again, if you're worried about uploading, contact me at info@eldersclimateaction.org, and I'd be more than happy to walk you through the process. To see the candidates who have signed the pledge, again, it is the box down here at the bottom under the email template, and it says pledge responses. And I believe, Margot, you were going to take over from this point.
Yeah, thank you, Jen. And I noticed there was one question from Melissa asking how to avoid duplication. So this is perfect timing now to answer that question. And I want to remind everybody, this has been a lot of information and detail for you to remember, and that all of this is being recorded, and you'll be able to go back to our website and listen to it again and again if you need to. And of course, you can always reach out to us at info@eldersclimateaction.org for help in sorting this out. So when you go to the pledge responses, like this that Jen has up on the screen now, brings up a spreadsheet of candidates who have signed the pledge. Now they are listed by state, and the states are listed in alphabetical order. Within each state, there is not any distinct order for how the candidates are listed. So you would scroll through the ones that for your state to see if you can find a pledge already having been signed and submitted from the candidates that you would be approaching. You'll notice here that there are lots of names from Arizona. That's because earlier this year, our Arizona chapter did the piloting of this project and managed to get responses from lots and lots of people running for state and federal office in Arizona. So before you're going to go out and approach a candidate, you might go to this page and look and see if any of the candidates in your district or senatorial candidates have already signed. If you approach a candidate and they say, oh, we already signed that, you can look on this website and say, well, we don't seem to have received it yet. Now, it's true that a couple of years ago, we had a different climate pledge that we did approach candidates with. We had a much smaller project. We did not have very many people signing it in very many states, but it may be that a candidate that you approached did sign it in the 2016 election. However, you can say to them, this year we are doing a new pledge. It's a stronger statement, and we're going to be listing your name on our website showing that you have signed it, so that people will be able to see that you spoke up and you took a stand on climate change, and encourage them to do it again. Now, once you get a signed pledge from someone, it's really important that we thank them. So if we can have the next slide, Jen. Great, thank you. This is an essential part of building your relationship with a candidate who may become your elected official. So for those of you who use social media, you can use this piece on purple box on the left. You can right-click on it and download it and post it on social media. If you do that, make sure that you tag the candidate or include their name, state, district, and tag Elders Climate Action with the @ symbol Elders Climate Action. So that's one thing that you can do. You also could cut and paste this text box that's outlined here in green and paste that onto social media. So of course, you want to edit it and fill in your candidate's information in the state and district. You could also personalize it if you wanted to, and you can post that on social media. And then below that is a box that you can cut and paste for emailing for thanking a candidate. And again, you want to cut and paste that into an email and fill in the correct information about the candidate. And in this, if you're doing this by email, I really encourage you, if you're comfortable, in personalizing it in some way about what this means to you that the candidate has done this, what this means for the future for the children that you know and love, and thank them for it, and let them know that you will be following their campaign, and if elected, how they, what stands and actions they take once they're elected, and that you will be continuing to contact them to make sure that they follow up on this pledge. one of the things you also might do is if you get both candidates for a particular office signing the pledge, you could write a letter to the editor saying that both of them had. Or if neither of them signed, you could write a letter to the editor saying neither of them signed. Because we don't endorse a particular candidate, I would discourage you from writing a letter to the editor saying, you know, Sally Smith signed, but John Smith did not. So that it doesn't look like we are endorsing one or the other of those candidates. And I think now, Jerry, if you want to tell them about how they can engage more with us about this, that would be great.
So we have not had a lot of opportunity to have interactive talk on this, on our webinars. We will have a few minutes for questions and answers very shortly. And I'd like to thank Margot and Jen for this great presentation and just reinforce how important it is. You know, if you heard from Nathaniel, this is a really important election. You're hearing from all of us. I think we all know how important it is. And the more strategies we have to get candidates on board, to get people to vote, the better we will be in the long run. And the better our grandchildren will be. And that's, you know, clearly one of my strong interests. So next Monday at 6 o'clock Eastern time, 3 o'clock Pacific time, we're going to have another Climate Tea and Talk, which will be an open forum to just talk about and discuss either these issues that have been raised in this webinar or other climate change issues that you may wish to talk about. It will be a small, much more intimate group where we'll be able to have a lot more conversation. So that is on Monday, August 13th at 6 o'clock. And then our final webinar is going to be on August 22nd. And we are incredibly, incredibly fortunate to have Catherine Nejo, who's going to join us and talk about climate change and how to bring it to the local level in this very politically charged environment. She is a world-renowned, internationally renowned climate scientist, if you haven't heard of her. And we're really very fortunate that she's going to be able to speak to us. And the second part of that webinar is going to include all of the tools that ECA has developed that are going to be available to you so that you don't have to recreate the wheel. If you need a template for a letter, or if you know, whatever you're going to need to be able to take action locally, you will be able to, have. So now I'd like to thank Margot and Jen and open it up to some questions. And the first question is, I guess to anybody, is from this individual, I don't know anybody and I've never been to a town hall meeting. What would you suggest I do to get started on this? Maybe Margot, you could address that a little. You're muted.
Whoops. No, I think I'm unmuted now. Hi. Okay. I'm thinking about the first time I went to a town hall meeting, and it was not about climate change. It was about something else. This was maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Maybe it's the only time I've been to a town hall meeting, actually. And, you know, I'm somebody who's pretty comfortable speaking up, but I know that having someone else with you is really helpful. So, you know, you might, sometimes at these town hall meetings, actually, instead of asking the question, or candidate debates, they ask you to write the question on a card that gets passed up to the front, and a moderator asks the question, so it's not so public for you. You might want to write it down for yourself ahead of time and bring it with you so that you just read what your question is. You just ask the question and you sit back down, and you're not so much in the public view. Or you might ask somebody else to come with you. Maybe that person is more comfortable standing up and asking a question than you are, or having that person with you helps you to feel more courageous in doing this. And I tell you, the more you do it, the easier it will get. The first time I walked into that congressional office, even with a group of people, I was shaking in my shoes. But the more I did it, the easier it got.
Thank you, Margot. And we have a comment from somebody in the audience, and that is related to the question of how do I know whether they've already been asked by other ECA members to sign a pledge. And it actually happened that somebody went to a town hall meeting, asked the candidate to sign the pledge, and the candidate said, "Oh, I've already signed that pledge." And so what the individual said was, you certainly did. And that was in a previous pledge cycle. And we now have a new pledge that we really would appreciate your signing. It's different than the last one, and we're separating it out from the previous one. That one was a previous pledge from a couple of years ago, and kind of left it at that. So that was a way to address it, where a candidate may think they've signed a pledge. And truly, candidates get a lot of pledge requests in the mail and in the email. So acknowledging that, rather than saying, no, you didn't, acknowledging that they may have signed it, but this one is a new one. We just put it out, and we would love for them to be able to sign this one also.
And may I add something to that, Jerry? Yeah, I would also suggest that, if somebody says, well, I just signed one a couple months ago, you say, and you might say, because if you're at a debate or a town hall meeting, you're not looking up on the website to see if they've signed, you can say, I hope that is true, that was our pledge that you signed. I'm going to look up on our website when I get home and check and see. And if it turns out it wasn't our pledge, who might I contact to follow up with you to get a signature? And if they say, oh, somebody else already asked me about that, say, yeah, there's a lot of us who are concerned about it.
And right. I think, and I would back that up with, it doesn't hurt to ask multiple times. It doesn't hurt for that ask to come from multiple people. Maybe someone's a little on the fence about signing it. Maybe they don't typically sign pledges, but if they're asked by 12 of their constituents, perhaps at that point, they're gonna say, I need to sign this pledge. My constituents are asking me to do this. The other thing that I'd like to add is that for some of us, the in-person ask is a barrier, and we understand that. It's not comfortable for everybody to walk up to somebody and say, ask them to do something, right? To ask them to sign this pledge. So that's why we created the email template and the online pledge signing ability. And that is that you can send an email from the comfort of your own home, in your own little comfort zone, and you don't have to worry about that fear that you might have. I also would encourage you to break through that fear, step out of your comfort zone, and challenge yourself to make the ask in person, because I think a personal ask does carry more weight. They see you in person, they feel that social pressure. But if that's going to be a barrier to your participation, please use the email option, because we need as many of our members asking their candidates running for office to sign this pledge. So, and it's best if that email comes from someone in their district or someone in their state, someone that's indicated as a constituent.
Yeah, I would also add that I know in the last time that we did this, sometimes it took multiple contacts to get follow through. And one of the things you might do is call the campaign office and ask there, who would be the best person for me to talk to about getting the candidate to sign this pledge? And then you've got a personal contact with someone for follow-up.
Great, thank you. Well, I think we're just about out of time. I would like to thank Margot and Jen for the presentation. That was wonderful. I'd like to thank all our attendees for listening. I hope you'll join us for the Climate Tea and Talk on Monday, and then again next on the 22nd for Catherine Hayhoe. And I would like to just sign off now. Have a good evening, and thank you all.